Welcome to the BK Show podcast. This is episode number 21, and today I am joined by my friend Sven Raphael Schneider. Sven is the founder of Gentlemen'sGazette.com, where they help men to be gentlemen and look the part. Classic men's style, not fast fashion, backed by history, not trends, quality, not quantity. I met him at a Minneapolis St. Paul e-commerce meetup, and I think one other meetup as well, and he was remarkable. From across the room, I knew I needed to talk to him. He was dressed to the nines, but more old-fashioned style. He had his hair combed over, and he just looked like literally the most interesting person in the room, and I knew I had to talk to him. We struck up a conversation, and turns out we had a great time just chatting. I've now seen him at many, many events. We're both part of E-commerce Fuel, and I think he's truly just a remarkable person, someone who can take his passion, something he's very much into, and turn it into a business is inspiring. And throughout this episode, you'll see he's been playing the long game since day one. He didn't just chase the next sale or chase money here on many different opportunities. He's been playing the long game, and he's been doing it the right way. Super inspiring episode. I really, really enjoyed this episode. Please welcome to the show, Sven Raphael Schneider. Hey, welcome to the show, buddy. I haven't seen you in a while. How you been?
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Ben.
Yeah, I haven't seen you since the world shut down, I think. One of the last things I did was go to ECF, and you and I flew there together, I think, and we definitely flew home together. And I've mentioned it before, actually. Everybody left there sick. I think the whole flight home to Minneapolis was sick, and I think we were all, in hindsight, at least I was worried what could have that been, because I was terribly sick when I got home from there.
Yeah, it was interesting because I think the day we flew, there was like a fire at the airports. Everything was delayed. It was just hanging out there. We're tired from partying in San Antonio. And then we actually did fly home. And I had come down the night before. I could tell, my throat was really kind of sick. And I remember on the way home, there was one lady, she was from Hong Kong. So I was joking with her. I was like, well, how do we know you don't have coronavirus? And she was like, well, I'm from Hong Kong. That's just from Wuhan,
Well, and I don't think anybody really knew what it was at that time either. That's early February, right? We had just kind of heard of it. I think that was back when China was building these hospitals in like 7 days, and it all kind of seemed a little weird and definitely not here at that point.
Absolutely not. And I think even I went to Atlanta afterwards, and I know someone who got it at the Atlanta airport probably because it wasn't at the conference, but that was later, right? So we didn't, based on the bird flu and SARS and whatnot, no one thought really about it. But then retrospectively, I remember you texted me on Facebook saying, dude, do you think you had COVID? Because that sounds a lot like the symptoms you had and then I had. And that was when I first thought, oh, maybe I did. And then my wife had it like about 2 weeks after me, also like, laying in bed and stuff like that. Who knows, unless there is an antibody test that is reliable.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that, right? Like, so, looking back, I was down for a week. I don't think I left my bedroom. It was just the smallest cough ever, but my chest hurt. It was like there was demons in there spraying fire guns inside my lungs. It hurt so bad. And I just recently got an antibody test. They say, after 3 months, it's probably gone. I had zero antibodies. I kind of wish back then I would have gotten that tested just out of pure curiosity, but I thought it would, that's the last time I saw you. We don't need to dive too much into being sick, but I miss you, man. I miss you and I met at a couple of different Minneapolis meetups, right? I think we met at an e-commerce meetup, and then we met at a different meetup, and now we kind of have our own little clique, I guess you would say, that has their own meetup. Chris Carey kind of founded all that. Kudos to him for always putting those things together, but I miss getting together. I don't know if any of those are still happening or if anybody feels comfortable enough to do that, but I do miss that group of people, you and Chris and Blair Budlong, and there's quite a few other people in there that I really enjoyed getting together with every other month or so.
Yeah, I think initially we had an online meeting and then not many people showed up. So then in EO, a lot of people are also in EO here locally and Entrepreneurs Organization, and people have had in-person events and outdoor events and stuff like that. So that was cool. But yes, I'm a social person, so having interactions and meeting up with people. I also, through EO Network, they have these kind of bridge forums with other e-commerce entrepreneurs. So I joined something there, just so you have this kind of, we meet like once a month, so you have that input and new ideas, and so I enjoy that. But yes, having meetups is a a side effect of this whole pandemic.
Yeah. Well, look, I'd love to qualify you out of the gate. So anybody listening decides they want to listen to the rest of this, I'm doing research for this, for me and you to chat. And I know you're a YouTube guy. I know a lot of your brand resides on YouTube, but 903,000 subscribers, buddy, what are you doing over there?
Well, I think the first thing everyone always says is to look at the subscriber number, right? And I mean, soon we hopefully hit the million, right? So it's kind of that mark where people are like, wow, they're just excited. But in reality, it's nothing more than a vanity metric, right? So for example, right now, I just the other day, I watched a YouTube channel. It's something called like a German girl in America, right? And she has, maybe just over 100,000. But right now she's getting like 4 million views a month, whereas our channel, because the content we produce right now, we're at 1.5 million views a month. And yes, depending on what audience you attract, that can have an impact. But I'm always looking at how many views and what watch time of minutes do I get in the last 30 days? Because anything else is just, nostalgia, right? Who cares if there was a point in time when people loved the stuff I was doing and now no one watches neither the new stuff nor the old stuff. So it can be very kind of, I don't know, deceiving. It's like, having a lot of Facebook fans and likes and a lot of Instagram followers when there's no engagement and no sales. So I'd like to focus on what matters, not the stuff that people are like, ooh.
Well, you, sir, are too humble. 1.5 million views a month. That sounds like I'm pretty sure anybody else listening to this would appreciate that. Look, I want to dive into all that, but I want to hear your story. I want everyone to understand your business. Heck, I want to understand some of your business. Certainly, I didn't know what you were all about when I first met you. I actually looked across the room and I saw you in your attire, and I was like, who's this guy? Like, dressed to the nines, if you will. Like, you're going to describe this very much better than I can, of course. But like, you are Gentleman's Gazette. You are that person, and you were dressed to the nines. And like, I want to know how this all began. How did you even begin deciding like this is how I want to carry myself? This is how I want to dress myself. And look, how did it all begin? I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah, I think my parents didn't have any particular interest in clothes. Maybe my dad a little more so for loud things. But when we grew up, we bought what was on sale, right? Just what was inexpensive, or sometimes I had like hand-me-downs, and it was utilitarian. It served the purpose of clothing me and keeping me warm. And then when I was in high school or in the German Gymnasium, I started doing like, paperboy jobs and just earning some money. And as a regular student, you learn how to write with a fountain pen. That's how you write in school. And so I had heard about this brand called Montblanc, which sounds French, but it's actually a German brand. It's that kind of pen brand with that like white tip, which was kind of a status symbol and still is. And so I had looked around eBay, which was really new back then. And I had just signed up by the German company Alando, which was then bought by eBay within, I think, 6 months or so. And, they didn't do any background checks. I was a teenager looking around and I saw the different pens and I found one from Omas. And, I thought, oh, that looked cool. It was an Omas 360 with like a gold nib, and I got it. And I was like, oh, wow, I don't really think it's that different than my school fountain pen. So I sold it again for twice as much because I had nicer pictures and a better description. And I was like, oh, I could make much more money that way than doing paperboy jobs. So I quit the paperboy job and focused on doing that. And so I would buy lots and then break them up and sell individually. And so once there was a pair of cufflinks from Montblanc, I was like, oh, what do I do with it? So did some research and learned that you had a shirt with double cuffs. I was okay, now I have the shirt with double cuffs. What do I wear with that? And then I found the suits and that whole world. And there was a guy by the name of Bernhard Rötzel who wrote a book called The Gentleman. And it was about the wardrobe. And it has been translated, I think, in 20 languages. And, it's in the 18th edition. It's a really popular book worldwide. And so I read that, and it was all about that lifestyle and the clothes. And so I was like, oh, wow, there's a lot to learn. And then I found more books and older books. And so I got into that, and that's how my hobby evolved, maybe at the age of 14, 13,
Wow.
around that time.
Help someone who, like, look, I'm lost in this role. I'm going to be honest with you. I think I've told you this in person and we've chuckled about it, but like help anybody else who's also lost. What does it mean to be a gentleman, right? Like your website says, we help men to be gentlemen and look the part, classic men's style, not fast fashion, backed by history, not trends, quality, not quantity, right? What does that mean? What does it mean to be a gentleman in your words?
Yeah, obviously back in the day, right, the gentry was someone who had a certain status in society. Often they had land. They did not do any blue collar work, right? There were very defined rules. The way we interpret it today is very different, right? In a sense that anyone can be a gentleman. It's like a mindset, right? And it's maybe at the most basic level. It's like, what you can always ask yourself, what is a respectful thing, maybe even a loving thing to do in that situation, right? So you consider others in a way, and you don't just look at you, right, and your interests. And then that leads into a mindset of, I'm interested in things. And we did a whole video, I think it's like 60 minutes long, about the definition and the ins and outs and what it is and what it's not. But at the core, it really means that you think about others and you make sure that others in your presence feel comfortable. And if you hone in on that, you'll have that gentleman's mindset, I think, or at least the essence of it.
And so the clothes are almost, the way someone would wear a brand then, as far as like the way they style themselves, you're representing that emotion?
To me, clothes have a part of it, right? For me, it's a hobby. I'm interested in the clothes in its own sake. There are other people who use clothes as a tool, right? To be perceived in a certain way, to be perceived as someone who's successful, or just like you wear a Rolex, for example, right? To signal to people that you've made it in your career. And I don't necessarily tie the clothes and say, as a gentleman, you must dress in this way. Historically, and how it grew, yes, gentlemen would wear fine, expensive clothes, and then it turned into suits and jackets and ties. But I would say the modern gentleman today does not necessarily have to wear this one style of clothes, right? Because the definition has moved away a little bit in that sense. Nevertheless, a lot of people, oftentimes there's an overlap, right? People who value this lifestyle, they enjoy maybe a Chesterfield couch, right? Tufted leather seats. Think about the maybe old-fashioned drink, or the scotch that you sit there with, or you wear a jacket, maybe in velvet or black tie, right? Oftentimes there's overlap, and people start smoking cigars, or drinking wine, or eating fine food, or travel a certain way, or design the interior in a certain way, and drive a certain car, right? All these things can come together. But my definition is not that there's just one cooking recipe and one way. There's many ways, and you just have to figure out what works for you and what you value more than other things.
So I love that this started when you were 13, 14 with a pen, right? Like, how crazy is it that a pen started leading you down the path of discovering yourself and discovering what you were going to be passionate about moving forward? Can you help me understand the transition there of, like, you said you were still in Germany at this time, right? You were kind of flipping pens, if you will, right? And,
yes,
exactly. That led to some books. Take it from there.
I think someone once said, when they asked me about the story, how did you start and everything, and then he was like, oh, I asked you about that, about your clothing interest and how the clothing business started, and you told me the story of being interested in business, right? I never thought about it that way, but looking back, it was very clear I had an interest in business, right? Because I started trying to buy and sell fountain pens as a teenager, and both of my parents had nothing to do with business operations, right? They are both nurses, very solidly so, and they never thought about being an entrepreneur. And in my whole environment, there was no one who was an entrepreneur, right? None of the friends of my parents were entrepreneurs. It was just something other people would do, and that wasn't us, right? It was that kind of mindset. And I think that maybe carried on. It was the same thing with the clothes. And it was like, it wasn't like my dad would get dressed and I would, remember seeing him as a kid. Like, I don't have any of those pictures. Like, my dad doesn't know how to tie a tie, right? So he kind of leaves the knot in the tie and puts it back on. And there was none of that. It was just, it grew organically. And of course, with the power of the internet, I had the chance to find like-minded people who were similarly interested, because I grew up in a small town of 3,000 people. There were like cows behind my house. There was no one in my town or the next bigger city who had a similar interest. And I would have never been able to, or it would have probably taken a lot more time if I would have lived maybe like 30 years prior.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of the internet, right? We can all find our people. We're all interested in different things. And certainly I don't think I've ever met anyone interested in this type of lifestyle besides you, right? And it's amazing that you can go out and find, just using YouTube, 903,000 other people who are like, yep, I can get down with this, right? And I can't imagine how hard that would have been to find, in Germany or even in the United States without the internet.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. And it's like if you look at it in a different way, it's like we're all nerds in certain ways. Right, we're all ignorant in certain ways, and then the internet has enabled us to see what other people do, right, and just like open our minds to what's possible and what's out there. And I'm still sometimes, I'm browsing through YouTube, and it's like, wow, this guy, Badlands Chucks, like he subscribed, I checked it out. All of his YouTube videos are just him chugging large quantities of fluids, where it's like Mountain Dew or beer or seawater. That's his channel, and it's huge. It's like sometimes it's like mind blowing how you can make business and can make money, and we just discount or discard the idea as not being worthy, and other people just make it work.
I love it. I mean, that's the description on the bkshow.com. Like, whatever you love to do, you can make a business out of it. And you embody that. Like, this is you. And I really want to dive deep into your business. I want to understand like what made it grow, but like, where's that transition? Where's the transition from flipping pens and reading books, and being in Germany to now you're in America? Like, how does Gentleman's Gazette actually get its start?
Yeah. I did that in high school, and that was cool. I learned a lot of things, right? I learned that, waiting in line at the post office sucks, and that I enjoyed the marketing part of it more. And I learned that buying used goods and then trying to sell them is not scalable, right? So that helped me going forward. I went to law school then. I thought about becoming a pilot. I didn't think about starting a business because I didn't think of it as a business in that sense. I like get a real job, do something right. And so I went to law school. The pilot school didn't work out. And I went to law school. It was the first private law school in Germany. It was a nice law school. The building was cool, and I liked it. I liked being pushed and challenged. And but I realized a year in, that's not for me. I'll be unhappy if I continue with that. But then I had my first semester abroad as an opportunity, and I had never been to the United States, and I wanted to go because I was interested. And so in 2006, I came to the University of Minnesota as an exchange student because, one, my grades weren't really good. I was more at the bottom third of the class. And, New York and San Francisco is what most people in Europe know. So there would have been a spot open, I think, on the West Coast, but it was super expensive, right? I had a budget of like 450 euros per month at the time, maybe around $500, including rent. And so looking there, they were like, oh, it's like $1,100 for your dorm room plus expenses. And I was like, my parents don't have that money. I don't have the money. Because at that point in time, my business had really kind of gone down because I had to study so much for school. So I didn't do much with the fountain pens anymore. But then, came to the US, met my now wife, Teresa. She's also my business partner in 2006 at a Halloween party, so about 14 years ago. And then I decided to finish law school, so we had a long-distance relationship, and I came to the US in 2010. I moved here. I stayed here. We got married. I got my green card. And in the application process for a green card, you also have to apply for a work permit, and you just can't work. So you can't work. And so I was like, well, what do I do? For the first time in my adult life, I had time. I wasn't allowed to work. And so I thought, well, blogging was a new thing back then. why don't I give that a try? And I thought about, well, if I do something, I do it right. So I got a domain name. I didn't just get the WordPress part. And originally I had thought maybe Dreamweaver was the way to go, but a friend had told me about WordPress. He had heard about it and was pretty cool. So I got into that. I didn't know much about the internet or coding. I was good with computers, and so I just got into it. And I think I was always good at just learning about things myself. And I'm a very curious person, so that really helped. And then by the time I got the work permit, I had the first advertiser on the site. Because the business model was like Huffington Post. We create content and have ad revenue, right? That was the idea. And by then, I just sat down and said, well, how long does it take to make $100,000 from this? And of course, 2010, there was the crisis here. No one hired anyone, let alone a foreigner without work experience. And so Teresa was working her day job, being able to pay the bills. And we just sat down and said, well, let's give this a shot. I'm willing to do this because it's a passion of mine. It's a hobby. And ultimately, I started the blog because A, it was a hobby, and B, I was like, well, I don't find anything that I'm happy with that has a degree of detailed knowledge that I would like to read. So I have to do it better. And that was kind of the first step. And then, from there, people were like, well, where did you buy these gloves? I was like, flea market in Vienna, right? Not helpful. So then we were like, well, how about we start selling products? And that's how it all came about.
So are you deep in this hobby when you come over here in 2006 and meet your soon to be wife? Are you dressing all dapper back then?
Yes. I had, of course you come over with like 2 suitcases and that's it. But yeah, I had a suit, and back then I would, buy, because that experience on eBay, I could buy very high-end brands at a relatively low price because I knew all my measurements. And so even on a budget of a student, I was able to dress way nicer than most other people. And of course, I always kind of stood out in that way. Yeah. But as you noticed yourself, right, sometimes being memorable in a good way, right, is one thing. And you can achieve that by maybe, giving a presentation naked, or by giving a presentation standing on a table, right? You're memorable. Or you can be well dressed. In my case, that aspect of being memorable really ties into the business, right? So you can say, oh, the bow tie guy or the well-dressed guy, his business is dressing, right? It's like a connection that you draw in your mind automatically, which just happens to be that way because I was interested in this in the first place and then started the business around it. It wasn't like I decided that, this is a good business model. Now let's change my style and everything around it.
You are memorable. I kind of want to get an image in the podcast listeners' like mind's eye right now as they're listening to this. It's not like, you can picture what people wear to weddings, right? This isn't the same attire, I would say, right? Like you're wearing wool, and very. Is there a way you could describe it so that the listener's going to understand without having to head to a website? Like you definitely stood out of the room, right? You had your hair combed over and gelled, and again, you had a bow tie that was wool, and you had this wool jacket on top of it, and very like khaki colored pants, but they obviously weren't khaki. I don't know how to describe it. Is there a way you could describe it so that somebody listening to this would be like, oh, I get what he's saying now? Because it is memorable. It's remarkable.
It's funny, I don't remember what I wore that day, but you remember colors that I wore in my outfit, right? So that's a good point. I think most people today, when they think about being well dressed, they think about business attire, right? A dark suit, a white shirt, a tie and shoes, or maybe a pinstripe suit, and that's it. Now, back in the day, the suit, as we know today, was actually the casual garment. It was called the lounge suit because it was something you'd only wear if you wouldn't wear more formal garments, such as a morning coat or a frock coat. And so then, in the country, people wore like tweed jackets out of coarser wool and different things. And there were distinct areas, right? You would wear no brown in town, but in the country, you wouldn't wear the dark colors. Today, anyone can wear anything they want, right? So you can be much more playful. And I can wear a tweed jacket in the city, right? Which back in the day would have been too informal. Well, now it's still more formal than anyone else in the room, right? So you can kind of adapt and adjust. And I think I just enjoy playing with different textures and colors. And I try never to wear this exact same outfit twice, right? It's kind of that internal challenge, always change something. That doesn't mean that maybe this pair of pants and this jacket work well together, but I always have a different shirt, maybe different tie, different socks, different shoes. So it's never the same look twice. And to put a word on it, it's hard to describe it to someone who doesn't know about it, right? Because I could tell you, yes, I'm wearing, a Donegal tweed jacket, but it doesn't mean anything to you, right? So I would say it's just different than what you know, different than a regular business suit, in the sense that it has more texture, more patterns, and more colors.
Yeah, I picture someone putting on their smoking overcoat, if you will, right? Like a very well-dressed man who's putting on his cigar overcoat and going into his office, that, his library, right? That's kind of what I picture when I picture you, buddy. I don't know. I love it. You're right. I do remember the colors. I remember the red bow tie the first time I met you. I remember the pants. I remember the overcoat. You are memorable, right? You are remarkable. Look, I love that this is just you, but I want to dive into the business side because it fascinates me, right? Like, it fascinates me that people can have different hobbies. Like, I would have never thought of this, right? And I bet most people listening, if they go to gentlemansgazette.com, they probably never thought of this either, right? And the fact that this is you, this is your hobby, and you turn it into a business is fascinating to me, right? So I'd love to dive into 2010, 2011, when you just decided to start a blog. What are you putting out? You said you wanted to put out remarkable content, better than you could find anywhere. What are you writing blog posts on at that time?
It was about the details, right? I always liked to go deep when I was interested in things. And oftentimes, blog posts were short, 600 words and stuff like that. And that's how I started too. I think our first post was about the Panama hat. And in the beginning, right, it's not like I sat down and had that concept. So it was more like, things popped into my mind that I saw that I found interesting. There were different fora, like Ask Andy About Clothes. And there was Style Forum, right, where like-minded people would chat and talk, but there was a lot of kind of half knowledge or incorrect stuff. So it was just an outlet for me to, share what I had learned. I also would go, and go to old libraries, look at old-fashioned magazines, because I learned from the 20s and 30s, they were a lot more detailed than anything else that was out there. So and then I would, photograph that stuff, and I had an archive. So it was like a wish of sharing that knowledge with the world and doing all that. But I was looking around me, right? And was like, well, I need to post every day, right? So then I realized, wow, if I continue doing that, I'm going to be burned out pretty soon. And I had a friend by the name of Antonio Centeno from Real Men, Real Style. He's in Wisconsin. And at the time, he had a made-to-measure online business that was failing. And he was kind of transitioning out and writing content at a website called The Art of Manliness. And I had read an article and left a comment, and he had seen it, and he reached back out, and we started the conversations and, became friends. But he was a little more business-minded because he had been around for much longer, right? So he was like, well, are you still doing everything yourself? I just hired these virtual assistants in the Philippines. Then it was like, wow, I never thought about that, right? But yes, there are lots of things I could outsource to people to help me be more productive and not be burned out. And but the content was clothing related. But sometimes maybe we'd buy a really nice cheese and we'd write a guide on cheese, right? Which today we wouldn't do anymore because yes, food is part of the brand, but there's tons of food blogs, right? So if we were to do something about food, then it would be very much related to the gentleman's lifestyle. That's always the angle. And I think we did it pretty well in a natural way. But over the years, we've just gotten better and more in depth. And I think in the beginning, even I tried doing videos because, it was a cool thing. And for what we do, sometimes I would take a picture and people would say, oh, it doesn't fit you well. And then I would have the video and they were like, oh, no, I'll take that back. It actually fits you well. But that moving image just pervaded a different sense, right? And it made a lot of sense. But then I kind of had that self-limiting belief that I had this kind of standard for myself of what I wanted the Gentleman's Gazette to be, right? It had to be done properly. And so I decided to stop or not continue with video because my standards weren't met. If I would go back today and I would just kept filming, learning as I go and get better, we'd probably have 3 or 4 million subscribers today and be a lot bigger in terms of views because we just started earlier and weren't afraid to just put myself out there and just do it, right? So sometimes, or in my case, that really kind of what was a mistake, right? But I mean, we all have mistakes that we make. Like no one ever says, I started an email list at the exactly right time, right? Most people will say they did it too late. It's just how life goes.
Yeah, I think there's somebody, I can't remember her exact phrase, but Angie Lee, she's a huge influencer. She always says, like, start now, start when you're scared. And it sounds like you're giving yourself the same advice. But I'd love to like break your journey down into chapters, because I want to know how you went from living off your wife's income here on a green card to having a huge website and a great business, if you ask me. And so, like, what was the first step, right? You started putting out content. Did you flip on AdSense right away on your website? Like, how did the traffic begin? Did you just start putting out blogs and people started finding you? Like, what was the method of getting traffic in the beginning?
In the beginning, it was, I had always learned to make the buck stretch very far, right? So it was very frugal. It was like a mindset that came from my parents. And so I knew I couldn't just pay for traffic. That was not an option. So then I was like, well, what else can I do? And at the time, SEO was still like in its infancy. It was new. But I learned that if I could optimize certain things and I could get links, that then I would get good traffic. So once I was past that phase of I have to write every day, then we consciously said, let's try for every piece that we write about a particular topic for it to be the best post objectively that you could find online. That was kind of the goal, right? And so then the idea was, if we did that simply by the fact of being a good piece of content, it would attract links, right? So we wouldn't have to artificially try to build links. And I also looked at, Google at the time, because at the time, and that, you could just do all kinds of shit, right? You could put meta tags in there and just put the same word 3 times in there, and it worked out. But I took a step back and said, okay, what is Google working towards? So I looked at, well, they were actually modeling their whole algorithm on academic journals, medical journals, saying you become more important the more often you're cited in respected journals. And the idea was, of course, to provide the most relevant search result for a human being. So I felt if I would create content that was ultimately geared towards a human being and was really good, I wouldn't have to go back and constantly, make the changes as Google made their algorithm changes. The idea was truly to produce evergreen content that was really good. And of course, there is no real evergreen content because you have to update it periodically and all that stuff. But at least the mindset was that. And I think that helped us grow our traffic a lot, and that analytical mindset to also go in and see, oh, I did this, and now I added headings, and my average time on page doubled, right? So it was like, wow, I can have the same words, but if they're formatted differently, people read it twice as long. That's pretty cool, right? So now I can roll it out to the rest of my website. And just this constant curiosity and drive to improve led to, organic growth. And then I remember there was social media. There was like Facebook. And I learned that you could actually just, post your Facebook posts. And I was able to run 1 cent ads in the beginning. That was the lowest I could go for clicks. And what happened was when people would click, that would drive this kind of organic search. So Facebook was a really strong traffic driver for us until, pretty much overnight, I would say, with the course of 4 weeks, they changed it. You couldn't automatically promote your latest post anymore. And the organic reach dropped and became this like pay to play platform, right? And so then we kind of said, hey, we don't want to invest money into something that long term won't yield a reward. Because coming from a law background, I realized that it sucks that if you have to work to make money, and you stop making money when you stop working. I didn't like that system. I wanted to build something where I could build something and would make money, and then I could rethink and do something else and would make money. But I wanted something that would continuously provide me with an income.
So how do you begin monetizing that, right? Like you're clearly started at the right time in order to, I don't want to say take advantage of Google, but you could do a lot of messed up things back then, right? But you could still rank just by putting out the best content, right? Google wants to serve its customer the best content. Sounds like you did your structuring correctly back then. You wrote the best content. You drove a little bit of, traffic from Facebook back when, again, Facebook was kind of a different animal, 2013, 2014, way back then than it is now, for sure. When did the monetization come on? When did you realize, okay, I need to stop just putting out blog posts, but I actually need to, turn this into revenue?
Pretty early on. I think we started in 2010 in like February was when the website was up, and I got my work permit mid-year 2010, and by then we already had our first advertiser, who was Kirby Allison. He was in the niche. He had created these like hangers for men, and he was interested and was reaching out and was like, hey, I like your content, can I advertise? And I was like, sure, was flattered, talked to him, and he was like, well, I want a long contract with you and all that stuff. And then, a few months later, I probably had bad business, but he just stopped paying his bills. I was like, hey, what's going on? And he was like, well, I don't want to pay anymore. I was like, okay, what's going on? Well, there must be a way to cancel this and whatever, right? But so that first model that we had, building ad revenue through that became the first dent at that point when we realized, well, I can do everything I said. I can deliver on everything I said and not get paid, right? And so at the time, I didn't want advertising of anything that I couldn't stand 100% behind, and I only wanted related stuff on the website. So then we just added all kinds of smaller brands that we thought were great quality and worth being advertised. It was all private negotiations. We never put any AdSense code on our site. And of course, then over time, with that experience, we learned, well, A, we can't just rely on advertising. We have to diversify our income. And then B, people were like interested in products. So that kind of put a idea in our mind, well, we could sell products, right? And we can keep having the advertising. So we're somewhat diversified. And then down the line, of course, as we grew, the brands we were working with didn't grow with us. So, they wanted to pay the same rate that they paid 2 years ago when the traffic was 10% of what it is now. And it was like, well, that's not sustainable. And so then also, I think ad technology got better where they would, have retargeting, just show you stuff that you already knew. So you weren't upset if you saw whatever ad on my site because you had seen it before, right? I think we started with ads, like programmatic ads, much later, because in the beginning, they couldn't run on HTTPS sites, and we needed HTTPS for our shop. I think if we would have started probably in 2014, 2015, but they weren't ready until a little later. But, that's how it goes sometimes.
So in the beginning, it's all direct relationships. And is it just ads or like affiliate? Are you talking about products and running affiliate links?
Yep. No, at that time, affiliate links weren't really that big, especially in our niche. There wasn't really an affiliate program for stuff, really. It was sponsored content sometimes, right? Where they would send, in the beginning, they would send me stuff and I would write about it. And then over time, we were able to have relationships and people would pay on a monthly basis to have a banner ad, and then also maybe to have some content around their products, so to speak. But ultimately, when you start out, right, you want to share with the world what you think. You don't want to write about something that you don't care about just because someone pays you for it. So there's always this kind of ambivalent relationship, right? Because people want you to write about stuff and pay you well, and you try to come up with an excuse to justify it, when if there was no money on the table, you would never write about that stuff, right? And so that was an aspect I never liked. I was always kind of, I saw other people that were just fine, promoting stuff, but that was never me. And it almost felt a bit like a prostitute, right? Like, yeah, they were the richest people in the Wild West, but just because it makes money, it doesn't mean I want to do it.
But that's super noble, right? In the beginning of your business, times are lean, right? I can see the need to want to not always make the best decisions in the beginning, right? Most people who start a business are focused on money in the beginning, and they're just chasing all that money, right? And so it sounds like you made some real tough decisions in the beginning to do the right thing and play the long game, and it's clearly paid dividends at this point. But
yeah, and that's very true. Having that long-term vision was always something that I think separated me, right? I had no problem with delayed gratification.
So what year do you transition to products? Like if you started in 2010, what year do you actually start transitioning into your own products?
Yeah, we had the idea of products, I think, in 2011. And then, we needed money to actually buy stuff and develop all the products. Because at the time it was like, Amazon was growing. I could see it on the walls. It was like, as a small company, we will not be able to compete with Walmart, Amazon, or Aldi on price, right? So that was out. Plus, I personally wasn't interested in that, right? So then we're like, well, we need to be able. And then I had seen there was another store in our niche, and it was like an Italian Thai brand. And he had promoted them and, sold a lot of them and really made the brand big. And then the Italian vendor decided to just start his own website and sell the ties for less, and basically cut him out. So I was like, well, that's a lesson I can learn, right? I don't want to build marketing for a brand that I can't control, because if they screw up the quality, right? Well, now I did all that work and I can't change anything. Versus if I have my own brand, let's say this one manufacturer goes bust, I can transition, keep it under the same label. And so for me, that was the right decision. And of course, Teresa, she's 50-50 business partner, because we were like, you're in this and we're doing this together. And so we were like, yeah, that's the right way to go. In the beginning, she was a little worried about, having an inventory business. And I remember once talking to a kind of an investment banker. He was not very interested in inventory-based businesses. He felt like it was a kind of risky, dumb idea to tie up capital. But it just was what I wanted to do. I thought that was a cool way to do it. And even at the time, right, there was opportunity to do different things with Amazon and sellers, but I wasn't motivated by a quick buck. I wanted to build something that I could be proud of, or that made me happy, or that I was interested in. And so then I think we started actually selling, I think October 2013 or like November, sometime around that. And at that point, Shopify was technically around, but I had never heard of it. Like they weren't a big player. And so I looked at it and was like, well, I know that in the future, if I want to make a transition with an e-commerce business, it's really hard. So I went with Magento, because at the time it was like the number one player. And I felt like if we ever had to go to an enterprise version, that was good enough for, I don't know, Delta or big stores, the transition would be easier. So we decided on Magento at the time.
I didn't take a note on that. I should rib you, because I think this comes up at every Minneapolis meetup we come to, that like half the room's on Magento. What are you guys all doing over there?
Yeah, I think sometimes you start out in a way, right? And you look at things that you need. And one developer once told me, you can do anything you want to do with Magento. You can't with Shopify. Shopify makes a lot of things easier and more user-friendly, but it also has its limitations, right? So I get it if you're like, Blair Butlong and all the custom solutions. I think they've legitimately looked at Shopify, but just ran the numbers and figured out it wouldn't make sense. Now, for our business, we also ran the numbers, right? We looked at Shopify, we looked at all the tools we need to run, look at all of that, try to talk to people and come up with, efficiencies we gain and so forth. And to us, it seemed like Shopify would be more expensive to run. Now, I know you're a big Shopify fan, and it's, I've bought their stock, and it's a good company, right? It's not like it's a shitty platform and whatnot. No, it's a good platform. It's a good software. But I guess I've always been interested in not just going with the flow because everyone does it, right? But just interested in evaluating, hey, what makes sense for me, right? I remember when all these help desk softwares came out, and people do all kinds of SaaS stuff, and just tallying everything up costs a lot of more money. Of course, if you can say, hey, it makes me that much more money, and I have that ease of mind, so I don't have any mental real estate that I need to dedicate to that's cool, right? But yeah, I'm happy. We're actually almost done with our Magento 2 transition now. And it cost me, some time. It was a long project, but it was on me because the project management wasn't right, and I'm not the most structured person. And we're doing EOS, and my wife is the integrator and the visionary, and we're just adding a lot more processes and making sure everyone know what's expected of them and who's accountable and whatnot. But almost done with Magento 2.
I think that's what holds people back, right? You almost have to have a developer on your staff.
We don't have a developer on staff at all. We have a team that here in Minnesota, and they're freelance developers. And I mean, the transition now from Magento 1 to Magento 2 in dollars, will cost us $14,000, right? So like the lowest quote I would have gotten for Shopify was more like $75,000. I'm sure you can do it for less in a way. It's just hard
to make the transition. You're saying,
yeah.
That's tough with a site that's been around a long time and has a lot of content. There's a lot to do in transitioning to Shopify, but I promise you, it was not in my notes list. I was not going to rib you about Magento today, but thanks for bringing it up. So, look, what was your first product, man? What was it? Something small? Did you just start with like a bow tie, or what did you start with?
Actually, no. In the beginning, I felt like, if you just had a one product, it felt weird, like walking to a shop for just one product. So we actually had quite a few. But we decided to do accessories rather than clothes because they were smaller. So the shipping weight would be lower, and you could resell them, and they had fewer sizes, right? So return issues. So we decided, and low capital investment with good margins. So we decided on accessories because that was good. So we had like ties and bow ties and scarves. And frankly, I had to go back to probably Wayback Machine to look exactly all the products, but we had a bunch of different men's accessories categories.
You started out with running ads. You moved to creating your own products because your traffic outgrows. And I'm looking at you on like SimilarWeb right now. This is showing like 800,000 visits. Like your site must be getting a boatload of traffic, right? And so you're outgrowing these small brands. How did the launching of your own products go? Did you immediately have the audience to start selling those products? Did you just have a WordPress blog, and then that's when you started up Magento and getting those to play together?
Yeah, we had a WordPress blog and the Magento, and frankly, like other than those Facebook ads, I never ran any ads because I always was maybe too cheap, and I didn't figure that part out a lot. And I liked getting the free traffic, which is in fact not really free, right? Because you invest time in your content. But at least I remember, right? All these people had asked about stuff, and I remember at first I was underwhelmed, right? It was like, well, we have sales, but not that I would have guessed we had more sales, right? And it was maybe a bit of that mindset. I just built it and I make something really great, and people will just come and buy it, right? And that was not the case to that extent. Because of course, just because you're interested in content doesn't mean you automatically want to buy the product from you, right? So that was that we learned a lot about, hey, it's that whole like buyer's journey, right? You buy from people you know, like, and trust, right? And we had been good on the trust front and the likability front. And I always was interested in a high quality product, so we got that covered. But just developing the whole marketing funnel, and then at the time we were like, I was interested in automation and what you could do. So we signed up with Infusionsoft. That was pretty kind of cool thing to do. And right from the get-go, I had found this company that integrated with Magento with Infusionsoft. And they had this recency, frequency, and monetary segmentation. So we can then build out flows, right? It's like someone bought something and we sent them a follow-up email and a thank you. So I think we did that really early on when, Klaviyo was maybe technically around, but no one had ever heard of it. And so that's where I invested my money on. Again, with the idea of not the short term, I'm paying for a sale and that's it, like renting traffic. I wanted to build a system, like a whole email flow campaign that I could put work in and then just let go and make me money, so to speak. So that's the angle we took. And then by 2015, we were like, okay, let's give video another try, right? And then we did video, and I had also talked to people and seen that it was their strongest channel. So we did that again, right? Started at the bottom in our basement. We were in a condo building at the time, and it was from 1916. There was a porter's room, so we repurposed it as our studio, and everything was so tight. So when we had product photography, I had to shift everything around because I could pay someone to do product photography, or I could just buy the camera and learn it myself. I was very much in that I can do everything myself mode. And I wasn't at the point yet where I would say, hey, in order to scale, I need good people, I need processes, I need to do that. And I think that letting go, we're just now at that point where I'm not just fully comprehending, but fully embracing it. What gets you from, let's say, 0 to 1 million, that kind of, that pioneer spirit, that doing things and driving is not what will get you from 1 million to like 10 million or 20 million, right? You need to change your mindset and what you do at every step along the way.
Yeah, it shifts from, how do I get ahead, right? That's the beginning. How do I get ahead? It's hustle, 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 right? And then it shifts into, how can my team get me ahead, right? And eventually it's still about you, right? And then once you shift from there to how do I help my team get ahead, right? That's when the growth really starts happening. But it's you can't start at 30, right? You got to start at 1. You got to hustle. And
exactly.
I want to dive into your video stuff, man. You have 903,000 subscribers, let alone you have 800,000 total visits here. I don't know if this is monthly or not on SimilarWeb, but Jesus Christ, that is a lot of traffic. That is a lot of subscribers on YouTube. Your videos here, you have 4.3 million views on Ultimate Guide to Table Manners. Look, I'm going to need to watch that when I'm done because I don't have those. And I've sat next to you at a dinner. You should know this by now. I definitely don't eat the same way as you. But like, holy cow, man, that's a lot of subscribers. That's a lot of views. Talk me through that. Where did you start? What did you look into, keyword? Did you do any keyword research when you started that? Did you look into the long tails? Are you making your title a certain way? Or, what is it, the thumbnail? Tell me all the things I need to know about YouTube to get to 903,000 subscribers in 5 years.
But by the time we started with YouTube, we had nailed down our SEO tactics in terms of, keyword research, competitiveness, all that stuff. We understood that part of the game. And actually, I learned so much about it that for a while the business wasn't making, tons of bucks, or at least I always thought if I leave the money in the business, I'll grow faster. Going back, I think if I would have just paid myself a salary and made it more legit, maybe we would have grown faster, right? I mean, it's hindsight 2020, but there was a brief time where I did consulting work for like private universities, because they would spend a shit ton of money on paid ads, sometimes like $200 a click. And so I could go in and say, well, if we rank organically for that crap, I'm going to save you that much money. So I had learned SEO and stuff, and we had the same approach in Google. At first, we thought we'll do the exact same approach, right? The most of their traffic will come from search. And apart from the fact that it was a good medium for the kind of products that we were selling, there were like 2 other people, right? One was Antonio from Real Men, Real Style, which I thought I could do better than him. And then there was another guy named Aaron Marino from Alpha M. And I also thought I could do it better. I think there was even a channel called Teaching Men's Fashion there. And I was like, guys, what are you doing? So I was like, I know it better, right? I got to do it better. And of course, right, I learned so much in theoretical courses, and it was good. But by the time we started, if I look at my first video, it's embarrassing. And I leave it up there, right? So people can see there's a progression, which is cool. But that first we thought we just do search related based stuff. And then, there was a lot of trial and error, right? You run certain videos and you're like, well, I do a video just about my product, right? But people they're not interested in that because what's in it for them. So then you rephrase things and you realize, wow, if I make it, the best wallet guides, now people are all of a sudden interested. So if we have a mention of our product in there, but all the others, right, it creates a lot more trust, and that drives a lot more sales than if I just do something about my particular wallet, for example. Plus, we also did content, that was where we didn't sell anything at all, right? And with the idea to build trust in the long term and build a brand, not just to have a quick sale. And then YouTube, even at the time, provided a lot of really cool analytics. So, they had, and they still have, the audience retention metric. So it shows you exactly in a graph at what point in time how many people watch. So sometimes when you watch something and it goes up, that means people went back and watched it again. So I could go back and analyze, what did I say? What did I do to cause people to watch things again? And reversely, what did I say that made people zone out and leave? And just by doing that, I think we could get our average audience retention percentage from about 22% up to like 50%, right? So that was huge, just using data to understand what works and what doesn't. And then later, we started using UTM parameters. So we mark up every link from YouTube and every social source, and then we track it with a tool called Wicked Reports, that allows us, unlike Google Analytics, to give a certain attribution. We can say, well, I want an even attribution between first click, email sign up, and last click and other interactions, or I can shift weighting more towards the first click, just if I want to understand where do most customers start out, right? What's the last click and all that stuff. So we use that to attribute revenue to YouTube. And we've just found that, unlike a Twitter post or a Facebook post or an Instagram post or a Pinterest pin, right? No one cares about those 2 weeks later versus the videos. Even my 4-year-old video, generates thousands of views in a day. I'm like, that's pretty cool, right? So how can we do more of that mindset? Work once, harvest the proceeds forever.
What are your KPIs on each video? Like, I know I heard Eric Bandholz recently talk about, he'll have 3 thumbnails created for each video, and if he doesn't get an immediate jump of views within the first hour, he'll switch the thumbnail, right? And he'll rotate between the 3 until he finds the one that really gets the click-through rate and gets the views. So what are the KPIs for you as far as what are you paying attention to with each video? Obviously, watch time is huge, right? This is what Google cares about. They want people to stay on their platform and watch videos. But what KPIs mean a lot to your business?
Well, in general, like if we all want viral or successful videos, and from what I can tell, basically, it's the click-through rate you get and the watch time determines how much YouTube is going to push you, because the majority of the views on YouTube don't come from search results, but it comes from the YouTube algorithm pushing you, putting you on people's homepage, showing your video and a suggested video next to someone else's video, right? That's where you get the majority of your views. Unlike Eric Bandholz, we don't look so much at how is my video doing out of the gate, because we don't look at it as how many views do I get in the first week or the first day. I'm looking at how many views do I get in 2 years, right? And we have lots of videos that did very poorly out of the gate. Let's say how to iron a dress shirt, right? You don't care about how to iron a dress shirt unless you're in a position where you have to iron a dress shirt, you don't know how to do it, and you need it right now, right? So to me, that's okay that you're not going to watch my video right out of the gate and my click-through rate is low, and therefore it's not going to be a viral video. But over time, as YouTube learns at what moment in time when people search, maybe they'll display it. So now it's a super successful video. So we have a different approach than Eric Bandholz, I think, in that regard. And we look at our thumbnails and we try to understand what makes people click. And as far as I can tell, it's clickbaity stuff works, right? Extreme faces and bold colors and all that stuff. But it's like, well, how does that work with my brand, right? Do I just want a lot of clicks and views, or how is my brand perceived, and what am I building that is bigger than that, and trying to balance that? Then that aside, we do different kinds of videos, right? We have videos like a table manners guide, which is not related to anything we sell. But the idea is that someone interested in table manners is more likely to be interested in the products we sell than just the average person is, right? So we call those the top of the funnel or the tofu videos. Then you have a middle of the funnel video that is a little more narrowed down, maybe like, quality hallmarks of a wallet, right? It's around a product. We sell wallets, but it's not about us selling the wallet. And then you can have a more bottom of the funnel video, which is very close to the sale, which could be like my pocket square collection or my bow tie collection, right? Which is people interested in that, right? It's very nerdy. It's very down the line, but those videos can produce a lot of sales, much more than let's say a video about table manners, simply because they're very detailed. The problem is if I just do those bottom of the funnel videos that eventually will drive a lot of revenue, not a lot of people are going to see it because YouTube sees, oh, no one is interested in that. I'm not going to push that shit. Versus if I had other videos that are really popular, even my not so well performing videos reach a much larger audience than they otherwise would, right?
And they're leaving too, right? Like they're leaving YouTube. They're leaving YouTube to go to your website. And certainly YouTube knows this needs to happen sometimes. But if you did that for every single video and you got them to leave YouTube, Google's not going to reward you for helping people to leave their platform.
Exactly, because Google is, of course, interested in keeping. They know that the longer people stay on YouTube, the more money they make from those people. So the goal is your videos should keep the viewer as long as possible on YouTube, so they can make more money, right? And that's the thing. Like, if oftentimes the algorithm is pretty good now. You watch one video and you get all these related videos, and you go down the rabbit hole and stay there for 2 hours. That's exactly what Google wants.
So how did you take this long view out of the gates, right? Again, you are looking at this like a business owner should look at this, and not some guy who just wants to make some sales, right? So I do a fair amount of consulting, and the majority of people I talk to, it's figure out the next sale tactic. How do I get the next sale, the next sale, the next sale? Where you're not doing that. We've hit on this point a few different times along your journey, and so you're saying all the right things on YouTube as well. Like, let's not just put up sale videos. Let's put up content that gets people to want to watch our content, right? It doesn't have to sell something for somebody to be engaged and have a touch point with you, and for you to provide value, asking nothing in return.
Yeah, I mean, I think that asking for the next sale, it's like dopamine, right? It's the reason we pick up our phone and check for the next notification. It gets us a little high, but over the course of the day, it creates like cortisol, and it doesn't make us really happy. It makes us unfulfilled. Versus if you build an empire, it creates like oxytocin, right? Where you feel like you create something of value and something awesome, right? So I think it's part of my personality maybe and what I value. And I like to take a step back and not just say, oh, let's just go for the next sale again, because money is not the ultimately motivating thing for me, right? I could have sold, vitamin supplements or whatever, right? And I'm sure there's some people who are really into vitamin supplements, and if they sell it, it's great. I wouldn't have been that person. And I see there is tons of businesses out there where there's no real passion in there. The only passion is business or to make sales, right? And if that satisfies you in your life, that's cool. I'm not at that point. And fortunately enough with YouTube, we were at the point, we were making sales, we were having sales. It wasn't like this do or die moment. We just had to make that next sale to be in existence the next day. But we had that luxury. Or maybe you could also say the curse, right? Because there's other people out there, they make the same videos over and over again. But again, we came over from the point of view with a thumbnail, right? I know that today a clickbaity thumbnail works, but I also know that YouTube actively has testers and tries to develop algorithms to kind of discount clickbaity thumbnails, because we all know that feeling of seeing a thumbnail, right? I remember Eric Bandholz, for example, and I love what he does, right? But I remember that feeling of him having a thumbnail was like, I'm stepping down from my business, right? And at the end of the video, it was like, I'm taking a sabbatical because my wife is having a kid, right? Like, when you get these clickbaity titles, right? Eventually, you're trained to learn he tells me this, I click on it, and it's not what it says it is, right? Then I lose trust. And I think in the long run, that will happen to people. Sometimes I doubt that hypothesis, because I see people doing the clickbaity stuff over and over again, and it works and it gets rewarded, right? And you're like, man, why am I not doing that, right? I could benefit from that as well. But I truly believe that in the long term, it won't work. And I think we've already seen a big shift in YouTube in the last 2 years, where initially it was like post every day or 3 videos a day. And Eric Bandholzer remembered they went from like 2 million a month to 6 million a month in the course of 10 months by just posting like 6 or 7 videos a week, 1 video every day. And then that tactic didn't work at all anymore. Right now they look more at the quality and understanding what's going on and developing maybe different series, right? For example, we have a series called Is It Worth It? Where we look at expensive, iconic products to see if they're worth their money or not, right? And I look for patterns, seeing like, hey, people like to see, $5,000 wallet made for $70, right? That's going to be a 7 million view video for sure, because people love to see that kind of stuff. Or, restoring an old lighter or whatever it is, restoring an old pair of shoes, right? People love these kind of videos. They have a lot of mass appeal, don't necessarily drive sales, but you need those mass appeal videos to drive your subscribership, get the channel up. And then once you're big, every video will get a certain amount minimum of views as you grow. For example, I think Aaron Marino with Alpha M, I don't think he has a video that gets less than 200,000 views right now. And he sells that, right? He can sell that to advertisers and can say, well, I'm a good salesman. Your video is going to get at least 200,000 impressions in the first 48 hours. And historically, we've sold X amount, blah, 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 right? So you can do that. We just don't do any sponsored content anymore, because I'd rather build my own brand than get, quick cash for one video that has no retaining benefit for me and maybe will erode the trust that I worked so hard to build.
So you talked about tofu, mofu, bofu, right? Like, I think everyone's familiar with those terms. Do you, as a company, have we'll post X amount of tofu per month, X amount of mofu, X amount of bofu? Like, do you have a system in which you decide how many videos of each category you're going to post per month?
Yeah, we do. We do content planning. We have an entire content team. So we look at many factors, right? Seasonality sometimes is important, but we'll also try things, right? We always try new things and new series, and we test and look back and see, hey, what's working? But we definitely say, hey, we need, we still need an Is It Worth It? We still need bottom of the funnel video. We still need that. So yeah, we have a system of how much we show when, but we also experiment, right? It's not so easy to A/B test, because you can't just do that so easily on YouTube, but you have to work with what you got.
I'm shocked they don't have that, right? Like, I'm shocked they don't have like an A/B thumbnail tester or something like that, right? I'm shocked they haven't built some of those things into their back end.
And there's no way you can do that with, there's no like third party that can hook into it. Yeah. No, yeah. But I agree. It's like, it would be nice to have an A/B test to see, hey, for this specific video, because obviously, the thumbnail is one element, the topic is another, right? So if the topic itself is interesting, even with a shitty thumbnail, you can get a good click-through rate, but you never know. And you can change a thumbnail on YouTube, but if you change a description, YouTube's algorithm basically resets it as if it was a new video. So all that kind of clout or trust or knowledge YouTube gained, you'll reset it. So changing the title is only really something you do when the video is performing so poorly that you think you can't lose anything anyways. Versus changing a thumbnail is not going to have that same effect.
Something you said earlier is just sticking with me throughout this conversation of like, what if I would have stuck with it? So I had a podcast a long time ago on my own, and then I transitioned into it with a gentleman named Clint, and we owned ecomfire.com, and we put out videos every day. There was 3 of us, and so we just rotated, and we put out 7 videos a week, and our channel took off, and our coaching and our packages and everything we had took off, and then we kind of just stopped. And I do wonder, if I still own that brand, and put out a video, even once a week for the last 4 years, where would I be right now? So it's funny that you have those same feelings looking back.
Yeah, but at the same time, right, it's also like, okay, maybe I would have been burned out. There was a reason I stopped. Why did I stop? Right? Did it make me fulfilled and happy? And that's another aspect, right? We consciously decided to not. In the beginning, it was just me, just my face, and so forth. But then we're like, hey, we need to get other people on our platform, simply because some people will like me, others won't. And it's as a gentleman, we want to underline that anyone can be a gentleman. It's not just about a specific white man thing, right? So we added more people, and also that means that I don't have to be there all the time, and it becomes this kind of overwhelming thing because I feel like I have to have that many videos that I need to make per week, and then that makes me unhappy because I have to do things rather than doing things because I want them to do.
How was that transition, shifting from it being you, right? This was about you. You were the gentleman. What was that transition like to shifting to featuring other people on the channel? Did the views coincide when it wasn't you? Like when other people came in, did that take a little while to transition?
Well, most people are not too keen on change. So now at first, like, oh, what's going on? Oh, I don't like the guy. And I think it took like a year until the comments like, well, who's this dude? Stopped, right? And for me, that was fine. I think it was harder on Preston, our first host. And then, when we hired Kyle, then, he got the new comments like, who's that dude? Where are the other guys? That kind of stuff. But it's a natural transition, and it's the only way to grow. Like, Eric Bandholz did that. Like he hired people, and, he's a very competitive guy, but I think now the videos not by him outperform his videos. But ultimately, it's good for a beard brand.
Yeah, no, you see it in a lot of businesses, right? I tend to reference digital marketer in my eyes, right? It was just a couple guys in the beginning, and now they've transitioned out to having a ton of different faces and people creating courses over there. And I've always wanted to ask somebody what that transition was like. So it's funny that you spent a year of people in the comments, and they probably weren't all pretty comments, I would imagine, wondering, where you went and who are these new people.
Oh no, absolutely, and it's still something. There's also that whole aspect of like knowledge transfer. How do I get all the knowledge that I have and the principles and the core values so other people can, make their own decision and do stuff, but with that same value mindset that I would have done it, right? It's growing every company is a challenge, but that's something that any company has to do, no matter if you sell standing desks, dog food, or men's clothing accessories.
So I want to ask you some questions here that if you're not comfortable answering, that's totally fine. I can even snip this out if you want me to. But I still see you have AdSense on your site, which I think is weird, right? Like as far as an e-commerce store goes, right? So you have your WordPress, you have AdSense on your site. I would assume you're running ads on your YouTube content. Is that right? Do you have the ads enabled on there as well? Number one, can you talk me through the thinking there of running AdSense, having different, banners on your website, as well as running ads on YouTube, like getting people distracted from your own content? And then like financially, what percentage of your business is that? Is it a viable percentage that contributes to revenue?
Yeah. All good questions. So we run ads through an ad agency that, they sometimes, like, I think AdSense is like the backfill, but they also do lots of like direct deals with stuff like that. But you're right. We have a lot of traffic, right? And we realized, out of all that traffic, 0.01% of the people convert, right? So all the others don't. So the idea was, how can we make money of the 99.99% of people who don't convert? And so we had no ads, we had ads, and we didn't see any changes in our conversion rate for the shop when we had ads and when we didn't. So we kept them. And these are like, again, programmatic ads based on your behavior and whatnot. And it serves as a diversified income stream. What we've seen now with COVID, the type of content that used to be really popular that we had, like, how to tie a bow tie, right? Or stuff like that. people don't care about that right now. They're not interested in how to tie a bow tie. So our traffic, dropped by 45%. But our revenue now is like just 15% down. So that was an interesting shift, between our traffic dropped dramatically, but our sales didn't, because the people who buy don't necessarily see the ads with you. So that was the thing on our website, right? And it's about 80-20, 20% from ads, 80% from product sales. And it's just nice to have extra, free cash clear that we don't need to sell a single product for. It's just, we create a content anyways. It's just icing on the cake. Of course, you could say, well, maybe if you didn't have the ads, then you would make even more money by selling more products. We found that not to be true. Maybe we didn't test it right. Maybe it would be different if we tested it again today. I don't know. I
find it interesting, right? Like, I've just never seen it. So, look, I'm an SEO guy too, right? I can come into any business and we're going to make your traffic go nuts. But what do you do with that traffic, right? Ultimately, it drives your conversion rate down. Certainly, it's people raising their hand and saying, I'm interested in this topic, but that doesn't mean they're ready to buy, right? And so unless you're going to get their email, which again, you're not going to get everybody's email unless you get them in your remarketing audience and hit them with the next piece of their journey, which you're not always going to get right? You're losing a lot of people in that journey. And it's great. I love free traffic. I love the idea of trying to get them down the funnel through their journey or get them over to a product or help them solve their problem, whether they buy from me or not. I love all that stuff. But at some point, you still have excess traffic. And so I think it's cool that you're monetizing it. And I really just wanted to know, what does that look like behind the scenes? So the fact that you're getting 20% of revenue by placing these on here, that's a big number.
Yeah. And, it's the revenue that's highly profitable because it's all the cost, yes, I have cost to get content, but I would have that anyways, even if I didn't have the ads.
But you don't do like 100 and 200,000 in revenue, right? Just for, like, I don't want to reference any numbers you have, but you sat at a table of pretty exclusive people at one of the last things that we were at. 20% of that is a very big number, right? So like,
it's a sizable number.
Yeah,
that's good. That's why we're like doing it in a way. And I think that ideally, we've shifted to a very big focus on like, what's the customer experience like, right? So you won't see any like video ads. Also, what's the mobile experience as that's becoming more important. So that's always at the core. So in an ideal world, I'd like to only show ads to people that are less likely to buy based on all the data and information we have about them. It seems like it's going to be harder and harder in the future to programmatically get information from ads because of privacy concerns, coming from Europe and coming over here. So they're already now trying to, apparently email is a new thing. If you have the email address from people, they can immediately tie it to them when they come to your website and therefore yield higher ad returns. That's one thing. But we try to not, to stuff ads there and keep it in a way that it's kind of balanced. Ideally, I'd love to kind of, offer people a way to opt out for a payment, right? Yeah. To say, hey, I want ad free. Here is ad free. I want ads. Here is ads, like a YouTube, premium model. Like I have YouTube Premium. I don't want to see any ads, so I'm happy to pay for that.
Well, I find it interesting, right? I was just genuinely curious. Like, so between your website, like AdSense is one thing, and then the ads that are run on your YouTube channel. Do you know the breakdown there of that 20? What percentage which?
Well, YouTube is actually on the website. For every ad dollar we earn on YouTube, we earn about $7 on our website.
Okay, so AdSense is far more profitable.
Yeah, and it's not AdSense. It's we work with a company called Attire.
Okay.
If I just would put AdSense on there, it would be a lot less. So this is like, they know what they're doing. I've switched around companies and figured it out. They've had the highest returns for us, for our audience. But for YouTube, the idea was like, again, how does YouTube make money is with showing ads and data. And YouTube says it does not matter if you have ads on your video or not. I think in early results that we saw that we got more subscribers on videos where the ads were turned on. And so now I'm more like, if, based on the data we have, I will turn off ads on videos where I know we generate a lot of sales from, because I know that's worth a lot more, right? And only like really big popular videos, bring in thousands of dollars per year or over their lifetime. Smaller videos, sometimes it's not much. But just comparing this year's RPM, revenue per thousand, to last year, I see almost 100% increase.
Look, I think that's cool, and just surfing your website, it seemed as though you found another channel that most e-commerce stores wouldn't think of, right? So I see somewhere, it might have been in your footer, it said become a patron, right? And so I am very familiar with Patreon, however you want to pronounce it. Aaron Gleeman and John Bonus run a Minnesota Twins podcast on Patreon. I'm a happy subscriber. I would love to have those two on the podcast someday, because I think, again, they're living their dream and paying their bills by doing something they love. But how did you tie Patreon to your e-commerce business? And just to give a little background, I think Patreon and OnlyFans kind of came from their same not so child-friendly area, and now it's moved into things that are more mainstream. Certainly OnlyFans still has a lot of interesting things on there. I think Patreon's a little bit different, but walk me through your thought process of how this even came about, and then tell me what it is. How are you utilizing Patreon in your e-commerce business?
Yeah. So the idea is, originally write platform just for content creators so they can make money, because the reality is, if you take into consideration your production costs of videos and the pure ad returns you make on YouTube, it's a losing proposition. You most likely will not make money. How most YouTubers make money is by doing sponsored videos, right? That will create a lot of revenue. And we could do that too. We just decided that's where we draw the line, and that's what we don't do, because A, it will hurt building our own brand too much, and B, I just don't enjoy it. Even though the money is great and you can be very successful that way. I have friends who do it that way. But you're also almost forced to do it that way, right? You have to have your own product, or you have to have sponsored content, or you have to have Patreon to do that. Now, Patreon is just a platform, and it's actually, I think, a pretty shitty platform at what they do, considering that they're so big. It's, they have 6 different stats for the same thing, and they all give you different metrics and stuff like that. It's really not that great of a platform. And that's why we also say become a patron, because you can be a patron for any kind of platform. Right now, we direct people to Patreon, but I could very well see us in the future going to a different platform, because the main thought behind it is that people like to belong to something, right? Whether, you're American, you're Catholic, or you are a Minnesota Twin, right? Most people inherently like to be known and like to be part of something. And so for us, right, that meant okay, what does that mean, right? Right now we are an online community, but I know what most people would really crave is an environment, let's say, a nice mansion in Newport where people could wear the clothes and get dressed up in white tie, which is like a tailcoat. It's something that they can't wear normally, right? Because it's socially not required and not appropriate. Well, if we can create a place where you can do that, where you can have nice dinners and maybe, have a watchmaker come in and people can make their own watch in workshops, learn how to shine shoes and be part of that lifestyle, that ultimately, will be such a strong community that from a brand, it's going to be easy to sell products. But that's not even the mindset. The mindset is, let's create a true community of like-minded people that enjoy each other's company, because that's ultimately what it's about. And if you can tie it together to products or something in your company, that is great. But we just figured, there are people out there who really love what we do. And by gathering them in a spot like Patreon now, that gives us a great pool for product testers, right? Or for people who maybe, you can give away rejects that may have a little blemish, but that are perfectly fine. or right now those people, they want to test your stuff and want to be the first on the list. And so that's the idea behind it, building a true community. It's not how can we make another revenue stream, because frankly it's a small revenue stream right now, but still, right, it's nice. And it's like a subscription for content. When you subscribe to the newspaper back in the day, right, you paid for the content, and we still do, right? We subscribe to the Star Tribune, or I subscribe to things that I'm interested in, that I think that are worth supporting, whether it's the New York Times or Planned Parenthood or whatever institutions. You can give money to them and say, I value that. And we want to give people that opportunity, because some people just love to do that. So why not?
Yeah, so I'm trying to wrap my head around how it works for e-commerce, right? So Aaron Gleeman and John Bonus, again, they charge $1 per episode. They put out a special midweek. So they do a Sunday episode that's for free. That's their podcast, much like mine's on Wednesdays. And then they do a couple others, and they'll charge you $1 per episode. And so it costs me, I don't know, $5, $10 a month in season, and $3 to $5 out of the season to learn more about the Twins, right? And so what are you giving them? Like, I can read on here that they get they directly support your unsponsored content creation. They get a discount varying based on their donation, exclusive access to a Patreon feed. Like, do you have like a Discord or some sort of like Facebook group that they're also like, where's the community held, right? And then is Patreon simply like you're using that as how you're charging people? Is that simply the extent of Patreon?
Yep. We're still in the midst of figuring all those things out. There's different apps out there. There's an app called Band. There's other apps where you have basically, think of like Facebook, a Facebook feed that is chronological and where you don't see anything you don't want to see. Like the ideal Facebook feed, right? Just your friends and just the stuff you actually want to see, in this case for the Twins, that you get. Now, we do things like, you get early access to videos, right? There is a call with me, right? So we can once a month go over things and talk about new things we do. You get a glimpse behind the scenes, because it's like they're truly super fans, right? So they appreciate maybe a look into your wardrobe or what's going on in your newest product development or these kind of things. And inherently, a lot of people just want to give because they want to thank you and give back for all the value they derived from you. But having that added benefit, hey, you get our ebook, right? You get a discount for the shop. All these ongoing benefits are, of course, what will make your followership not churn and stay on there. I think initially a lot of people sign up just because they want to help you, but they stay for the value they get.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through it. Like I can picture my old company makes a ton of sense for them, and so I'm thinking through this pets brand behind me too. Of like, I already have a 40 to 50% reorder rate. How do I get those people into some sort of community where we can enjoy more things about their pets and hopefully post COVID maybe do some pet meetups or something like that, right? And like, how do I bring them together? And recurring revenue is it's the bee's knees, right? And so being able to have an extra, income stream that's recurring, I think it's genius. And I'm going to follow along as you hopefully, sort through your issues and your headaches and figure out your wins. And I hope, the next time we get to chat, you're like, all right, you got to check this out. Here's what I'm doing. Cause I think that's really cool. Like you're doing things that I just wouldn't have thought of, right? Like you're monetizing your traffic through ads, which I think is great. I also use AdThrive on this random website I have. So that's cool. That's good to know. Doing this Patreon thing. I'm always open to hearing new ideas on how you can provide more value to your audience while also, increasing your revenue. Because in the end, when we're bootstrapping these businesses, every dollar counts, right? So
absolutely,
I think it's cool.
I just love the idea of you have people who pay you money so they can test your products and tell you what the weak spots are, and they're really into your brand. It's like a win-win, right? It's like they'll love getting first dibs for stuff and giving you feedback on website and whatnot. And you have a revenue stream and you can, select people that way. Just, I like the situation where it's like win-win-win for everyone. I don't like to, squeeze vendors or stuff like that, or because I'm always interested in a long-term relationship. And I believe if I squeeze people, There may be there for me now, but as soon as the opportunity arises, they're going to be gone, and I'm not interested in that.
Look, you say all the right things, buddy. Seriously, this is authentically you. You're playing the long game. You're building relationships. You're not trying to sell stuff that doesn't make sense to you. Like, you're saying all the right things, and this is why I like you. You stood out the first time I met you, and I'm glad I've gotten to know you on a deeper level and can call you a friend. So I appreciate you coming on. What is a good way for anybody listening to this that wants to reach out to you? What's a good way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, we have a contact at gentlemansgazette.com. We run, a ticket system like anyone else, so stuff will trickle to me if they just say they want to speak to me. That's the best way.
Sounds
Otherwise,
good,
website is gentlemansgazette.com, and YouTube. Just Google Gentleman's Gazette in any way, shape, or form, and you can check it out.
and then go subscribe. Let's get this guy to 1 million. That's amazing.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Yes. Thanks, Ben.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sven Raphael Schneider. He's doing all the right things. He played the long game from the beginning. He's not chasing after short-term profits and short-term happiness. He's been doing what he loves, and he's made a business out of it, and he continues to make the right decisions for this business to last a long time. I really, really hope this was inspiring to any of you out there who think you are passionate about something you can't make money off, because there's a million ways to make money, and there's definitely people all over the internet who are into the same thing as you. And so I hope this episode was inspiring. I hope you enjoyed my talk with Sven Raphael Schneider. Check out Gentleman's Gazette. Definitely go subscribe to his YouTube. Let's help push this guy over 1 million. And just genuinely go see what he's doing over there. He's killing it on YouTube, and I hope you guys can take some notes. I know I did. As usual, if you can leave a review on iTunes, that's really, really helps out the show, helps us get more guests. Subscribe to the show if you aren't already. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Sign up for the mailing list. Do all the great things. If you're truly enjoying this episode, and there's a lot of you listening, I would appreciate all of you to go sign up for the email list. Click subscribe on iTunes. Leave a review. These are truly the things that give me feedback, so I know I'm doing the right things and continue doing the show that you all want to listen to. So please go do all the things. I appreciate it very, very much, and I will see all of you next Wednesday.